Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com. The Chris Voss Show. Hey, .com. Hey, we're coming here, guys, with another podcast episode. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to give us a like, subscribe to us on YouTube, hit that bell notification button, all that jazz, and support the show so we can keep bringing you great podcasts. We've got a number of them this week, including today with the fine gentleman I have before us. And what we're going to do is also go to patreon.com/Chris Voss. You can join our special Facebook groups there, and you can get access to exclusive giveaways of some of the gadgets that we review on the Chris Voss Show as well. So there's that. I'm going to be joined today by a wonderful gentleman, Michael Krigsman. Michael, how are you, buddy?
Hey, Chris, how are you? It's so great to be here.
Good. Michael is a industry analyst, keynote speaker, Wall Street Journal contributor. You can find him at CXOTALK on Twitter, and he's also has a blog and contributes to ZDNet. He's written over 1,000 articles and topics related to innovation, digital disruption, and leadership. So welcome, Michael. We're glad to have you.
Hey, Chris, it's really fun. I have to say, I like the kind of falsetto thing with vibrato that you have going on when you announce your show.
You know, that came about a long time ago. I used to do it because what's his face? Howard Stern used to do a homage to the old days when he used to do radio. And in radio, you know, they always have to push the bookends of the call letters. You know, WKNBC. And so for a while in the early days of my podcasts and reviews, I did that for like a week as just a homage to Howard Stern, and I just thought it was funny. And then I stopped doing it, and people actually wrote me and called me and said, "Hey, man, that's really funny that you do that." I'm like, "What?" It's just kind of it's a goof. And they're like, "No, it really sticks. It sticks in your head." And I was like, "Seriously?" And they're like, "Yeah, don't stop doing it." So I keep doing it, and now whenever people come up to me, they go, "Hey, it's the Chris Voss Show, dog." You know, they sing it, and you're just like, really?
Hey, it's become your signature thing.
I suppose it's one of those things. What's her face has a sex tape. One of those Kardashians has a sex tape, and I have this. So whatever. I suppose on my gravestone they'll put that or something.
Yeah, and we definitely think about you and Kim Kardashian in a similar
It's
way.
the sexiness. It really is. I mean, look at this face. It takes a lot of work to get the sexiness down right.
Oh, and you got it. You got it.
Yeah, pretty much. Something like that. So, Michael, I think we want to talk about the product a lot of people may not have heard about right now, the new Apple iPhone that's coming out. Probably we're anticipating being announced tomorrow. What do you think about that?
Well, I guess there's a lot to think about, given the fact that this seems to have been the greatest set of leaks that Apple's probably ever had. I mean, we sort of know everything about it. At least we think we do.
Yeah, Steve Jobs. It was kind of funny. After Steve Jobs passed, and when he hadn't quite passed yet, and he resigned from the thing. I think he died either the next day after the release of the iPhone 5. It was. Somebody had called me months before and said, "Well, we're going to send you out the new." I think it was the iPhone 5. We're going to send you out the new iPhone 5 cases, and I'm like, "You're going to send me the iPhone 5 cases on the day they're going to announce the iPhone? That means you know the specifications of the iPhone, and like no one's supposed to know that." And then, you know, Steve was still alive at the time, if I recall rightly. Yeah, it was months before. And so I tried to get them to give me the specs, the sizes of the cases, and once they realized what they'd done, they just clammed up. But the day of the release of the iPhone, I think I got the cases delivered before the phone, and I was like, wow, okay. So when Steve Jobs is on the ropes, and when Steve Jobs is gone, people are going to feel free to leak as much as they want.
Well, it definitely seems to be happening. I mean, what I thought was really interesting is the iOS 11 Golden Master has been released. And there are all these references in the code to other Apple devices. And it seems what happened, this was just reported today, I think, on Cult of Mac and some other places, that the software was living at public URLs with very, they're obscured, that very long name, so you would never find it. And somebody released those public URLs. And so, yeah, so people are downloading them and just having a field day.
Oh, yeah.
And I can just imagine Tim Cook, sort of rolling over and has to be breathing fire. But they say that they've been tracking down that the people think that Apple is fairly close to figuring out who it is. And man, woe unto that person or those people if they get caught.
Yeah. And then the subsequent year for the next iPhone iteration, I started getting all the cases like right away. And I'm just like, wow, this, now that Steve Jobs has passed on, rest in peace, they're just having a field day. But yeah, I noticed as Tim Cook had put his foot down earlier, I think it was this year, and said, we're gonna squash leaks and squash everything. But it's a hell of a train to keep quiet, and it's great readership and great viewership if you can get an angle on a leak or on a story.
Oh yeah, and it's hard to put your foot down and keep quiet when you have this enormous supply chain of so many companies that are involved. Think about the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of workers assembling these things. And then there are financial incentives. So if you are working at a Chinese factory, I don't know what the amounts of money are, but there are people out there who will pay you a lot if you can get a picture of a circuit board or a screen or whatever it might be, or the dimensions.
Yeah. I mean, we've had none of mine were leaks, but one time we had the hairgate situation with I believe the iPhone 6 would pull out the hairs of your beard if you held it too close. The corners would pinch. And I did a video on it, and it ended up on BuzzFeed. And so it's always been very lucrative if you can get some sort of angle on the phone business, especially an Apple phone. People just go crazy for those phones.
I know, it's funny. And now they've been announcing, I shouldn't say they, not Apple has been announcing, but the rumors are there's going to be the new Apple Watch and Apple TV and all of these various other products. Even today saw a rumor about a new iPod Touch that will incorporate the same vision security feature, facial recognition as security as in the iPhone 8.
That'll be interesting. And I guess we're not sure what they're calling it still, right? It's either the iPhone 8 or the iPhone X. Some people have been saying.
Yeah, the last I heard was it's going to be the iPhone 8, iPhone 8 Plus, and Edition X for the fancy, expensive one that very few will be produced. Like there's one report today was saying they're only making 10,000 a month at the moment of those high.
Oh, that thing's going to be like $2,000, $1,500 maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be that expensive, but I'm sure there'll be a very expensive secondary market. So if you buy these things and put them on eBay.
Oh God, yeah, that's what everyone does too in the early days. It's interesting. These phones keep getting more expensive. I don't pay for them courtesy of AT&T, who sends us all the greatest phones. This is the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus that we're viewing right now, and it's about, I think, $900 online when you buy if you buy it straight out. So these phones are getting more expensive. There was talk that the iPhone was going to be $1,000.
Yeah, these phones are crossing the $1,000 threshold. So it is pretty extraordinary. And I guess I also have a Samsung, an S8 that Samsung sent.
That's a great phone. I got the S8 right here. Unfortunately, my Mophie case broke the corner of it. We just got done panning Mophie cases. That's the second phone that Mophie's broken of mine. Turns out Mophie doesn't have drop testing. They don't have the military 801 standards. They don't use any of that in their cases. So they literally are one droppers.
You know, I got this great case. Can you see if you can see that?
Yeah.
I'll just take it off. We're kind of shifting a little bit away from iPhone pricing here, but this thing, it's made by Spec, and I bought this, and it was about $40. But the beautiful thing is, you see, it's very thin, and if you drop it on concrete, it really will save the phone. At least it has for me.
Yeah, it's got that TPU probably makeup. I forget what they call it. TPU, the specialized shock absorption system. But yeah, I was the old thing. But yeah, we segued here. But yeah, I wanted to plug my favorite phone, the Samsung Galaxy S8. Buy it instead of the Apple crapple iPhone.
Actually, I have to tell you, I wrote an article for ZDNet where I described that after Samsung sent me this phone, I had an iPhone 7 Plus, and I got rid of it for this thing because the bezels, I don't know if you can see that, right? Because the bezels are so small, it means that this relatively smallish phone, and this is just the ordinary S8, it has about the same screen area as the iPhone 7 Plus. And I thought, well, gee, that's a no-brainer. The phone is smaller and the screen is the same size, and I think the resolution is higher, and it's got great hardware.
Yeah, it's awesome. I even love the S8 Plus because I'm just getting too old to look at these small little screens. Like with my S8, I love my S8, but that Bixby thing just bugs the crap out of me. Do you like that Bixby thing?
Oh, Bixby is... There are no words how bad.
If I could find the chairman of Samsung, who I think maybe is in jail right now, I'd probably choke him over Bixby. I wouldn't. I'm not saying I'd harm the man, but just in my mind, I would like to probably choke him a little bit, just a little bit of mild assault over Bixby. That is the most annoying thing. And so one of the things is, as I love Google Now, and if you try and put Google Now on, the problem with Google Now is Google Now forces you to have these giant freaking icons. And I have not figured out a way to get it smaller without using another launcher, of course.
Yeah, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
No, sorry. So I'm kind of cursed, but what's kind of nice is on the Samsung S8, the screen is so big, you don't mind having the Google Now launcher buttons. But still, every now and then you push that stupid Bixby button, and you just...
I know. I was just going to say, I mean, who in their right mind dedicates a hardware button exclusively for launching something like Bixby, which has no real utility that I can find, and you press the button, and then I downloaded some little apps to try to remap the button, and those don't really work. And then there's this cat and mouse game that these app developers are playing with Samsung on how can we disable Bixby? And then Samsung says, okay, we're going to work around your Bixby workaround so that it no longer works. And it's just an annoyance.
It's like, I don't even know why Android puts up with it. I mean, Google should just be like, look, this is our phone. Google Now is our thing. You just knock it the hell off. But yeah, not being able to disable it is definitely made me really angry at Samsung. Now, I still love Samsung. I still love my phone. But yeah, the Bixby thing, every time I trigger that sucker, I just want to throw it out the window. And I have Google Now launcher on the S8 Plus. So really it shouldn't technically launch. It should, if I push that button, it should launch the Google Now thing.
Yeah, the thing is that I actually prefer iOS to Android. So I strongly prefer the Samsung hardware to the Apple hardware, but I like the iOS, and the notifications in particular with iOS, I think are better than with Android.
Yeah.
But to me, the physical phone, the advantages of the physical S8 phone, the hardware, just overruled all the other software considerations for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So back to the, let's go. Well, we can back to the iPhone. I don't know. I don't know how people afford these phones nowadays. I never have to pay for my phones. You probably don't either. Um, and just seeing, you know, I guess nowadays the $200 down is gone. You either pay like an amount every month forever, or you buy the phone outright for $1,000, and basically you have to give away a kidney.
It's, you know, these things are like computers. You know, for me, if I get it free, I'm thrilled, of course. But if not, I would still pay for it because it's I travel a lot for
Mm-hmm.
work. And so the phone becomes my daily work computer for a lot of my workday, especially if I'm traveling.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes, you know, it's like just a cost of, for me, it's a cost of doing business.
Yeah. Yeah. The we're lucky that we don't have to, but I don't know how people afford them or buy a phone every, you know, 2 years or every year whenever the thing comes out. I have a lot of friends that every year they're at Apple waiting in line. And this will be an indication this year if people are willing to line up and stuff. You know, one thing I've noticed, because for years I always used to be one of those protagonists who would always start fights on iPhone versus Android. And we would go back and forth, and a lot of people like my good friend Robert Scoble and I would argue on Facebook and stuff over which was better. And it used to be that I would just have these wars going on my YouTube channel, just comment wars of people commenting, just battling over, you know, I do these videos of iPhone versus Android, whatever the current version was. And the comment streams would just be insane. And I just pretty much ignore them. I just be like, whatever. And people would actually write me or call me and be like, have you seen the World War III that's going on in your comment box? And I'm like, yeah, I just let them have it. But I don't have any of that anymore. Even when I try and pick a fight or be a protagonist on Facebook now, like no one seems to care as much. Do you see or get any of that?
Yeah, you know, I think that we are the capabilities of the phones and the software have grown enough that at some point it becomes a personal preference. It's like Mac versus Windows. There used to be a big difference, and now there are user interface differences, sure. But either way, Android, iOS, Mac, Windows, the apps are there. You're going to be able to get your work done. And there's less of a sense of loyalty. You know, there used to be this loyalty to Apple as the underdog fighting against the evil Microsoft. And, you know, Apple's almost $1 trillion market cap company now. It's
Yeah.
not the underdog.
Yeah, they definitely aren't. I mean, they can afford to do what they want to do. So it looks like there's a few things out today that we can talk about. The iPhone X production currently just below 10K units per day. You mentioned this earlier in the show. It's kind of an interesting picture they have up. They have 3 different colors, the white, black, and blush gold, which I'm sure will be the one everyone.
Yes, the blush gold is certainly my favorite.
I don't really like the look in the back of these things. The cameras really look geeky and awful if this is really what it is, if this is a true picture. What did you think of the back of these? Did you see the picture of these?
Yeah, I mean they have a camera bump. It's like the phone has a small pregnancy.
It looks weird though with the way it looks like a street light. I'm gonna start calling it the street light camera. I think I better write that down and coin that phrase. It's the street light camera. You got green, yellow, red.
Right, there you go, exactly.
When the bottom one goes green, hit the go button. The street light camera phone. So I'm sure they're doing like what a lot of people do. I know the Samsung doesn't have it, but we have the AT&T LG G6 here that has the dual camera. It's got the normal and the wide shot. So that's probably what this is in here. That, or it could be an AR camera.
Yeah, I mean, our mutual friend Scoble he was the first one that predicted that Apple is getting into AR in a big way.
Yeah.
And now that seems to be the the consensus.
Yep, he sure did. He's been beating that drum and leaking out or getting a hold of a lot of leaks. I think, yeah, AR is going to be huge. I'm wondering, you mentioned earlier that before the show that there's a lot of references to add-on products. I'm wondering if they're going to come out with a VR headset like this, like the Samsung has, where you can use that in conjunction with your unit there.
It's a very interesting point. The problem today, I look at VR from an enterprise standpoint rather than consumers and playing games. And it's from an enterprise standpoint, it's very clear that virtual reality, augmented reality are going to be important technologies. But the problem today is the size of the headsets and the cost of the headsets. And I think Apple does things in a very careful, a very meticulous way. And so my guess would be that that they are working on it, but that they don't have the size down. They won't, or to rephrase, I don't believe that they will release it until they have the size and the cost within more manageable sort of parameters.
Our mutual friend Robert Scoble, I mean, he's a big kid, and that's why he's so good at loving this stuff and being really passionate about it, because it's always really new and fresh to him, and he's just always excited to play with it. But one of the things, and he loves VR, and I've gotten the VR headsets, and I don't know about you, but after about 10, 15 minutes in that thing, mine's getting sweaty, nasty, fogging up sometimes. There's some that have anti-fogging things with the events, but it's just, I can tell I'm wearing something on my freaking head. My head's falling forward from the weight. It's not comfortable. Like if I game with my PS4, I don't have to worry about, my fingers might get tired. That's about it. But when you're wearing that thing on your head, maybe it's just I'm a sweaty person or a big fat guy. I don't know. But it weighs on your head, and just I can game for hours at a time. There's no way I can wear a VR headset for hours at a time. I don't care how good it is.
Or maybe what it is, it's not you. Maybe what it is that the hardware is just not there yet.
Exactly what you were referencing earlier.
Yeah, and I mean that's the beautiful thing about all of this technology is it does eventually shrink. It gets smaller, it gets faster. Look at every technology. Look at cell phones, right? Calculators, all of it. And that'll happen with these VR headsets as well. It's just, and the cost has to come down. Not everybody.
Yeah, the cost has got to come down where the average person can buy it. The software's got to be out there. There's got to be that breakthrough game that really makes people want to buy the VR thing. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Are the people starting to line up at the Steve Jobs Center or wherever the Apple store is yet for this thing? It's normally about 2 weeks away from the launch, right? So
yeah, that's right. And it's tomorrow.
I think the lines are, for me, the real indication how much people show up in lines and how much people really want that phone. They're really saying it's going to be a leapfrog. It looks like some of the leaks are saying, this is appleinsider.com. They're saying that the iPhone X and 8 is what they'll be called. Apple Watch will have LTE, so it will run on its own, and 4K Apple TV with HDR. Yeah, you definitely got to have a 4K product out nowadays when it comes to TV.
Yeah, and they also, I read someplace that there's AirPods version 2. And so here's my prediction for the AirPods. And I had AirPods. I bought some, and then when I switched over to Android, I sold them because they didn't work all that well. They were great with the iPhone. They also never really fit my ears. But I think what's going to happen is with the Apple Watch. So now it's got LTE built in, so you can make phone calls with it without having your mobile phone, and you'll be able to play music. And so now with AirPods and the Apple Watch 3, you have a self-contained communication and music playing device that simply doesn't require a phone. And I think that's what we're going to see tomorrow with the
That'll be
AirPods.
interesting. Yeah, it's the Apple Watch is just I don't know anybody who really uses it. In fact, a funny joke I'd heard the other day about I think it's the Boston Red Sox has been accused of stealing signals with an Apple Watch, I think. And someone made the joke, hey, somebody finally found a use for that thing.
I bought an Apple Watch. I had it, and when I changed over to Android, I sold it. Well, I sold it A because I changed over to Android, and B because I knew that they would be releasing another version. And the moment Apple announces or releases a next version, the price on yours drops, some large amount. So I try to get in under that wire. So I sold it, but I loved it. And in fact, this is a true story. The Apple Watch alerted me to a very serious health problem that I had that I didn't realize. I wrote about this, and it had like 60,000 views or more on Internet. And I'll just tell you briefly, it's a true story. So I was wearing my Apple Watch, and periodically I would get software notifications saying your heartbeat is slightly high. And I looked at this, I thought, this is crap. This is like notification spam, right? Like more notification bullshit spam that we get all the time. And it kept happening. And then I started looking a little bit more closely, and I found that in fact my heart rate was being elevated on a consistent basis. And it wasn't just sort of spurious readings.
Yeah.
And so I went to the doctor and I said, hey, it's very clear that my resting heart rate is going up. And when I'm walking, my heart rate is higher than it should be. And so something is going on. And so they did all of these tests right away, and I'm fine. Everything is fine. But it turned out that I had developed a overactive thyroid gland.
Oh, wow.
And that's a real thing. And at first they didn't know what it was, but they did these tests. Again, I'm totally fine. It's all back to normal. But it alerted me to this problem, and I sought care and had tests done. And man, it was right. And and it wasn't something that I felt, right? Without the instrumentation, the sensor, I would have had no way of knowing.
Well, that's a great use case. So, but then you sold the watch, Michael?
Well, I got
sold the watch that saved you?
So yeah, I know. I mean, that's like gadget loyalty, right? So I got a new one. I got this Garmin that works really well with Android, because the Apple Watch just doesn't work. The old Garmin. And at first I thought, I'll never sell the Apple Watch. And then I got this Android phone, and I thought, well, screw it. I want to have a thing on my wrist, and Garmin. So I researched and tried a Polar, and I ended up with Garmin.
Yeah. I think, are you friends with Andy Grignon? Our friend Andy Grignon through...
No, I don't know him. I know his name, though.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Andy Grignon, he was one of the original guys on the team of 10 or 12 that built the iPhone, the original iPhone. And if I ever want to get like a roll of expletives out of Andy whenever we're hanging out, I just ask him, hey, Andy, what do you think about the Apple Watch? And he just loads privately.
I liked it. Hey, listen, I liked it. I mean, you get these notifications like, hey, an email has come in. So if I'm in the kitchen and my phone is in my office, I'll get the notification 10 seconds sooner. Well, maybe that's worth, I'm not sure how much it's worth. I don't know if my life has any loss now that I'm not getting those notifications. But I liked it. And I liked the fact that the health tracking software, that apps on iOS can link into and read the data off of the iPhone, the Apple Watch, and so it creates the opportunity for sort of richer analytics of the data, and that's a good design. It's a really good design.
I mean, I like having the watches. I think Qualcomm or some other people several years ago actually came out with standalone watches. I don't think they've ever done well. In fact, most wearables I don't think do well. Mocha Care sent me one thing that I was pretty amazed with, the blood pressure cuff. And you could put it on. I think I was trying to get a Withings blood pressure cuff sent to me, and then they got bought out by Nokia. But it was amazing to me. You can just, using your wrist, you can do a blood pressure test and see how your health is going.
Yeah, so I got one of those too. This is by a company called Omron, and as far as I can see, let's see if the camera will autofocus there. There you go. And this was I got this because this whole thyroid thing I was telling you about. But this Omron unit, it's okay. It comes with a piece of shit app. Well, I mean, you have to call it like the blood pressure thing itself. The hardware seems to be pretty good. There's this new one called Cardio with a Q that's advertising itself as the best one. It looks pretty good, and their app looks pretty good. But I'm a huge fan of health and wearable data and sensors of all kinds, because the more you know about what's going on with your body, if you have, if there are apps that help you interpret that, how can that be a bad thing? It's just,
it's got to be good. I mean, especially if you're marketing to the market of people that there's something always wrong with them. You know, the health.
Like all people, I mean, all of us have, right? I mean, health. Yeah. You mean the entire, if you're marketing to anybody that lives on the planet.
Or marketing to the hypochondriacs who, will buy stuff. I've got to have 5 cuffs, 5 blood pressure cuffs to make sure I double check and background them all.
Yeah, or gadget freaks,
Or gadget freaks.
Healthcare wearable gadget freaks. There's your money.
I mean, yeah, I know people that are such in love with going to the doctor that when they go to the doctor and the doctor says, no, there's nothing wrong with you, they actually go get a second opinion. Because they're such a hypochondriac. But no, you're right. They do apply to everybody and how it's going. So this should be interesting. A new launch of a big Apple iPhone. We've been seeing a lot of the AR sort of implications. Robert Scoble's been reporting on a lot of them. And I'm going to have to hear him go ad nauseum about AR when that stupid phone launches. I may have to unfollow him for a while on Facebook.
Yeah, Robert's a great guy, and he's a little noisy on social media at times. A little noisy.
Well, I used to love him when we used to talk about everything, but he's kind of cornered the market now on. I still love him, but he's kind of cornered the market now on AR and VR and talking about it. And I think a lot of people are just like, well, I don't have that yet, so I don't really feel like I'm a part of that world yet. But yeah, 4K TV, Apple TV. I think I still have like an Apple TV 1 or 2 around here. I was actually looking for the cord to plug it in. I think this is a version 2 or 1, and I've had it kicking around. I should probably look at giving that thing away and getting rid of it, and moving to the Apple 4K, whatever. I don't know.
Hey, I don't even have a TV with an HDMI port.
You need to seriously get some TV sent to you for review there.
We have 2 TVs in our house, right? We have this little Sony analog television that we have in our kitchen.
Does that have rabbit ears?
Sorry?
Does that have rabbit ears?
No, we actually do have cable. No, it's actually a Sharp Aqueous. And then we have a large, an ancient cathode ray tube.
Oh, wow.
TV that probably gives off as much radiation as North Korea every time we watch it.
I've been playing a game. I think the name is Ark on PS4 with my nephew and my uncle who live in Utah. Or not my
Arkanoid?
Ark, the Ark.
Oh,
whatever.
The Ark. Okay, I thought it's not like one of those bricks.
No, it's kind of like Minecraft, only with better graphics. with the same stupid sort of idea. And you have to build stuff and build your culture and build worlds. But for a long time, I've been arguing with them about how crappy the graphics are. And the graphics are so bad on my TV that I start wanting to puke. I start getting motion sickness because the graphics are just so awful. And they're like, oh, Chris, we don't know what you're talking about. The graphics are great on our end. And I've argued with them a bunch about it and complained about it to the point where I just can't play the game. I just want to puke. Turns out I just realized yesterday that they're running on 720 TVs and I'm running on 1080p. And that's why it looks great to them.
There you go.
It's kind of like when those newscasters finally got HD and realized that we can all see their faces really too well, you know?
Yeah,
like,
right. So I've got on our kitchen TV, we have a generation or second generation Roku, because it's one of the ones that doesn't require an HDMI connection. Right. So that's what we use.
You gotta love it. Well, it'll be interesting to see what they come out with tomorrow. I think Robert had predicted that it was going to be a clear phone and it was going to have like a keyboard at the end and maybe some electronics at the end. But that aside, it looks like they're going to have new emojis. It's so foreign to me, the whole emoji experience. I really don't care. It's like such a pain in the ass to go find an emoji that you want to use or know which one's the right one. Like anytime I'm talking to a chick, I'm like, okay, what message am I sending with this emoji? Am I going overboard, or if I'm not? It's just like, just write something for the love of God.
I'm still trying to figure out why animated emojis are such an important thing that people write articles that, oh, you know, this phone or that phone has got 3 new animated emojis, and this is meaning.
I just cannot find the level of give a shit at all to that concept of emojis, animate emojis. I mean, if girls start emojiing me back, then I gotta, you got emoji fit in, but then you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna scare her away with this emoji. It's just, and then like sometimes Cher's really big at like doing a whole string story of emojis on her Twitter, especially when she's yelling at Donald Trump. And I'll try and read her whole emoji, whatever, and it's just, I just want to shoot myself in the face. Like, it's like trying to translate a different language, really.
Oh, it's the modern hieroglyphics.
Ugh. It's all because we can't get millennials that can spell or, work hard enough, because God knows they might save a lot of time with an emoji so that they can, I don't know, spend more time with whatever millennials do. I don't know, complaining about working or something and being in their mom's basement.
or it allows people to express the nuances of emotion without words. So if I write something and I include a little smiley face or whatever, I'm conveying emotion. And if you and I come from the same, more or less, cultural background, then I can make the assumption that if I send you this emoji that represents some particular emotion in me, that it will spark the same emotion in you, and we'll have that much more of a kind of intimate conversation, or more deeper communication, put it that way.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I guess I've just reached that point of being old and over the hill technology-wise, where I'm like the get off the lawn guy. Like, get off my lawn with your stupid emojis and your animated GIFs and all that sort. I've gotten better with the animated GIFs. Like, I'm good enough to be able to on Facebook Messenger go in and find a good GIF to funny something up. But you're right, it does. One of the problems is that I've always had with text, and I've always had to put an LOL on a joke that I write, because people either won't know it's a joke, or they don't get the emotion of the thing. And sometimes if you're doing something that's tongue in cheek can come across as offensive unless you put like a stupid emoji on there. But the people that write like whole lengths, and then even like the guys that nowadays, this is what I hate, they do commercials and they'll do a bunch of emojis, and you're just like, oh my God.
Well, there are people who have sort of mastered the art of conveying emotion without emojis. I mean, let's see, who comes to mind? Hemingway, William Faulkner. Oh, and then there's Leo Tolstoy. He didn't use emojis, and somehow he sort of got that communication.
We'll just wait for the new Stephen King book that's just straight emojis. 100%.
Yeah, right. And Stephen King seems to have worked it out pretty well also, how to write without emojis and convey some kind of emotion. He seems to have gotten that pretty good. He's pretty good at that.
It's just that work, those extra words you have to write. You could spend your time drinking Mountain Dew and eating Pop-Tarts and watching cat videos on YouTube. I mean, you got to have your priorities.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I guess if you're going to use the words for that purpose, it does require some extra level of time, not to mention practice. Requires some practice.
Yeah, I remember some comedian did a joke. I forget who it was, so I can't reference who it was, but they did a joke. They go, I wonder what people do with all that time they save when they shorten words and use emojis. I mean, what do they do with all that time, those hours they save every day? Oh man, it's and half the time I just look at it and I go, what the hell? I'm not even like it's almost to the point I have to hire a virtual assistant to be a translator for me. Hey, can you read my emoji, whatever?
Yeah, well, like I said, it's the new hieroglyphics, and so you have to learn how to speak that language.
Oh my God. Future aliens that find the remnants of our society by digging, the archaeology of our society up like we are now, like the Egyptians and pharaohs and stuff. When they dig us up, they're just gonna be like, what the is this?
They're gonna come across the animated poo emoji, and they're gonna say, this was an advanced civilization.
This is an advanced civilization. That or they're gonna say, this is what started the fall of Rome, right here, of their Rome. Yeah, the decline began with the emojis.
There you go.
It's when their whole society just went to crap. The other thing they'll look at when they look at our society is they'll just be like, God, look at all these pictures. They were always happy and never sad.
Right, there you go. And that's right. They'll look at Facebook and they said, these people had perfect lives.
I don't know how, like my brother, I don't have kids. So my brother has 2 kids, and then he has him and his wife. And every time one of these runarounds comes around for cell phones, he's got to load up the whole family with these mobile phones. And for the iPhone, that's like $4,000 freaking dollars for 4 people.
Right.
To get one. I don't know how families afford this stuff,
Yeah, my brother also has got 3 kids, and they get these phones, and I thought,
I just look at them and I just be like, look, the whole family can get phones, but we're gonna have to sell one of you, and we're gonna have to decide who gets sold.
Which one is it gonna be?
One of you is gonna have to go to the organ harvesting Chinese company and lose a kidney to pay for the phones. But this is important to the family. Until next year, what we'll do is every year we'll take a kidney from one of you.
On a related subject, at Thanksgiving, I think it was Thanksgiving last year, we were talking about software, and these kids are in high school. And so they were talking about some of the applications that they use, which I didn't know what many of them were. And I said regarding one of them, I said, oh, okay, I'm going to get on this application and I'm going to, find you and connect with you, whatever they call it. And her face, sort of dropped frozen white with, like I might actually do it. I connected with her on Facebook, and I think that was bad enough. But the idea, I don't remember the names of these applications, but the idea that I would sort of find a way into her real social circle, which is not Facebook,
Yeah.
was just terrifying.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. Like even my nieces and nephews, they're on Instagram, and I don't really comment on their stuff, or every now and then they'll show in the feed. They tend to like and comment on my stuff, but yeah, it's kind of. I don't want to be the oh your old uncle's here or whatever, you know. People like going, what is going on? Yeah, it's that old. I remember I was engaged for a while and had some teenagers during it, and yeah, we go to the mall and they'd be like, hey, you guys need to walk like 50 feet away from me at the mall, and they were just embarrassed to be seen with their parents. And so I guess that's the new social media, embarrassed to be seen with your parents or older people.
Well, of course, social media is going to reflect your. It's social media is not separate from the rest of your life. It's a reflection of who you are.
Snapchat's been interesting. I think Instagram is eating Snapchat's lunch. And Snapchat used to be the place where they could go hide out. And so I don't know where they're hiding out, Kik or WhatsApp, or, you know, it's kind of funny. I keep hearing everyone uses WhatsApp, and I go on there and like, no, none of my friends are using it. So I'm like, well, who's all these people using WhatsApp?
There's a lot of people, you know, I use WhatsApp, but not as a social network. I use it purely functionally because I do business with people in India.
Yeah.
And WhatsApp is running on their phone, on you know, some developers, project managers, and if I want to reach them, WhatsApp is the fastest way to do it. So why not?
I guess I need to expand my base into India and people that use it. It's kind of like some apps do really well in different places in the world, which is kind of interesting. I remember Path was like really big in Singapore, I think it was, or Indonesia, and they eventually sold it to a company over there. And you're just like, I was going, hey, no one uses Path, and turns out there's like a whole continent that's really into, not a continent, but a country that's really into this one app and keeping it alive from dying.
But sometimes there's reasons for that. So for example, with WhatsApp, we don't really need it because texting for us is free, and we have enough bandwidth, you know, most of us with our phones, that we can, you know, make a phone call. You know, phone calls are cheap, whereas you go overseas and it may be more expensive, or there may not be sufficient bandwidth, although nowadays in many countries they have better mobile infrastructure than we do. But still, WhatsApp is great because you can text, and there's no texting fee. There's no fee for the text. Then you can have a phone call, and it's a voice over IP phone call, but it uses the person's number. It maps the number onto that voice over IP call. And so it works, and it's convenient, and it requires very little bandwidth, and you get very good quality given the amount of bandwidth that it requires. And so we may not have a practical need for it, but those folks do. And so it's no wonder that it's become so popular, especially overseas.
Does WhatsApp do well in China? Because I know one of the biggest problems they have with China is getting over that firewall that they have.
I don't know. I assume that there's other programs like Weibo and others. I don't know.
Like I'll have emails with people in China, and I'll send pictures or screenshots, and they're like, "We can't see that." I'm like, "Why can't you see that?" And they're like, "Ah, it's blocked."
The great firewall.
And, yeah, or like I'll send them to a link. They'll be like, "Well, send us, you know, your YouTube channel." I'll send them a link, and they're like, "Yeah, we can't open that." And I'm like, "What? What do you mean you can't open that?" So then I have to remember, oh, you're in China, which is a real pain in the butt. But what can you say? What other things do you think are going to come out with that new iPhone? Anything you're predicting? Any things you think are going to come out?
I don't know. I mean, I think we've covered most of it. It's very clear that Apple is focused on healthcare, which makes perfect sense, because if you think about the market for people who have something wrong with them, or may get something wrong with them. It's a big market, like every person on the planet. So Apple wants big market. So healthcare is coming. We haven't heard anything about new healthcare capabilities now. So I don't think it's coming now. And then the other thing that's eventually going to happen with Apple is some type of autonomous, the capability to enable autonomous systems like autonomous cars. They were talking for a long time. There were rumors about Apple building its own car. And then those rumors kind of morphed into Apple building the systems that can power autonomous vehicles. But there's a big, but that healthcare, better sensors to measure sugar, to measure insulin, to measure who knows what, oxygen, all kinds of different things in your bloodstream, non-invasively. That's just an enormous market. And the same for systems to enable enormous world-changing kind of market. And so that's where Apple is focused. And they've got the time, and they got the beer, right? They got the money to do it.
They got money to do whatever they want, and they can lose a few if they have to. Reading about some of the other things, it looks like there definitely will be an iPhone X name, because it was leaked in some iOS 11 firmware. It'll be interesting too. I'm looking at the Google screen here on appleinsider.com, and I'm seeing the home. There's a home thing. I wonder if they're ever going to come out with a competitive product that, like the Alexa, the Google Home, and I believe Amazon and Sony are working on something now to compete with them on that.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's funny. I was in the Verizon store yesterday, and I was looking at their Google Home device, and man, it's really good.
Yeah, it really is.
It really works well. But before we leave these new products, I have to say I still have an Apple iPod Classic with 160 gigabyte hard drive.
Oh wow!
With the physical buttons. And as far as I'm concerned, it is a far superior user interface to any music service that,
even Spotify and stuff.
Yeah, and the reason is because it's I have to dig it out and I could show you, but because it's got physical buttons and very few buttons, and it's like a dedicated device, you can change songs without seeing. You just, click one side of the thing. Yeah, you push one button and it goes there, and you push the other button and it goes there, and you push the third button and it stops.
See, millennials can't handle that. It has to be on their phone. It's got to be on an app.
I mean, it's a pain in the butt because, you don't have access to Spotify. You need, you have to put your phone, your songs physically there. It's great for planes if we're traveling someplace where there's no cell signal. But nowadays, with memory cards and with the large amount of storage memory that are coming out in these devices, if it weren't, it's more practical to use the phone. Plus, if a call comes in, you can take it if your music's on your phone. But for sheer just simplicity of user experience, as far as I'm concerned, nothing beats it. Steve Jobs had it right with the first iPod, and they refined it down to the iPod Classic, which was the last in its line, which is the one that I have, and nobody's improved upon it.
Can you imagine if what the world would be like for Apple if he had said, we're just going to stick to computers. We're not going to build music things. We're not going to build a phone. Because originally he didn't want to build a phone, evidently, from the stories that have been told.
Yeah, isn't that something? I mean, the brilliance of Steve Jobs. I mean, it's just beyond. It's beyond.
And my friend Andy Grignon tells the stories of the lead up as they were building the iPhone, and the troubles they had, even at the launch, where they had several different iPhones up for Steve Jobs, because it would fail it would fail after like 3 to 4 movements. If you move through 3 to 4 different apps, it would fail almost on a 100% basis. And the one time it did not fail was during the Steve Jobs presentation. And they were just horrified sitting in the audience. And all week long, they were horrified because they couldn't get the thing to work. And Steve was, and they were trapped in the, what's the name of the center? The Moscow Center in San Francisco.
Yeah.
You know, they were trapped all week in that center with Steve practicing his thing. And so, you know, Steve keeps using the, and they keep failing. And yes. And so they had, like, I believe it was 5 phones that they had there for him so that he could, and the audience couldn't see the game. And he was switching between phones. But the actual one time that he did it, they went through three things, and it worked. And they were just in shock that it worked. But the story. You know,
Bill, there was one of the major Windows releases. Bill Gates was on stage, and in the middle, got a blue screen of death.
Yeah.
but I have here.
Oh, look at that! Whoa.
Yeah, and I don't see. Can you see the screen? Yeah, there you go. Can you?
It's an ancient timepiece. Wow, it's been a long time since I've seen one of those. Holy crap!
Right, and I can go forward. I can go backwards.
Actually, has buttons.
Yeah, just by pressing the buttons.
Right now, millennials are going, "What is that primitive ancient device that man has?"
Now the problem.
How does he make calls on that?
Yeah, exactly. Right now, I have it in a case, but it's pretty small. The weakness of this thing, however, is the fact that it's got a physical hard drive.
Yeah.
There. And that's, you know, so, you know, eventually, and look, I mean, the size, there was a while, I forget what these hard drives were called, who made them, but there was a specific size, and, they're tiny, the size of a quarter, a little bit larger than a quarter. They're tiny. So, eventually the hard drive is going to die, but you can actually get conversion kits now to turn to replace the physical hard drive with an SSD drive.
Oh, really?
So
inside of that little thing?
Inside of this thing, yeah.
Holy crap.
And eventually I might do that conversion. And the sound quality is good. It's, it's a dedicated device. It does one single thing. And usually we hate devices that only do one thing. Sometimes when a device does only one thing, it's optimized for that specific purpose. And therefore it does that one thing better than anything else. And as far as the iPod is concerned, I was really bummed when they stopped selling these things, because I thought it's just the best that there is as far as as far as a user experience for playing music, at least in my opinion.
It's because they can charge more for phones. They want you to buy those planned up.
Yeah, well, phones are much more high tech.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, this thing.
You know what I do, Michael? I just put my music on a micro SD card and just put it in the phone, and it's all in there. Looks like you're locking up on me, Michael.
Oh, I'm back now.
You're back now. We've got some sparking. I think we've been yakety-yakking for about an hour, and like I say, the stream usually degenerates over time because Google, I think, pulled some resources from their old Google Hangouts.
Oh yeah, you have to love Google and Google Hangouts.
Yeah, there you go.
That's a bad joke.
So we'll wrap the show. I've got you back in live, but we're getting the sparking again. So so we'll just wrap the show and give the feed that. It was wonderful to have you on, Michael. We should have you on more often. I'd love to have you on anytime. Maybe you should come on after they launch the iPhone, and we could talk about what the reality is of what Apple's launched.
Yeah, let's do it. It'd be fun.
Well, Michael, give us your plugs again, where to find you on the interwebs, the inner tubes of the interwebs.
Yes, good old George Bush. If you don't know, for people who don't know, so what's going on in the world? Oh, well, there's this thing, the interwebs.
I think there was the Alaskan Center or whatever who talked about giant tubes.
Oh, yes. And now you can see Alaska. That's right.
So Good.
Okay, so you can find me at CXOTALK.com, CXOTALK.com, and on Twitter at @mKrigsman.
And I'll just repeat those for him as we go through it so that we can get those. It's CXOTALK. Michael Krigsman, industry analyst and host. He also is on ZDNet and has written over 1,000 articles. Holy crap. That's a lot of writing, man. Major newspapers, TV, radio, trade publications. Be sure to follow him over on those channels and all that sort of good stuff. So it was wonderful to have you, Michael. And like I say, we should probably do some yickety-yacketing. Maybe we should have Robert on, and the three of us can talk about Apple and AR and all that jazz.
Oh, yeah, let's do it. Robert's been a guest on my show. He and Shell, actually, not too long ago.
Shell's wonderful. There's such two greatest guys, I think, in the world. They're just wonderful guys.
Let's do it with Robert. It'd be fun.
Yeah, it's always fun with Rob. All right, bud. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. Be sure to give us a like, subscribe to us on YouTube, hit that bell notification button so you get notifications on your phone. Be sure to go to patreon.com/Chris Voss so you get access to private Facebook groups so you can win some of the gadgets that we give away here on the show. Be sure to follow me, of course, all the channels across social media at Chris Voss is usually where I'm at. Chris Voss everything, really, when it comes down to it. Thank God I was first on all that. Anyway, thanks for joining us, Michael. Thanks for our audience for attending, and we'll see you next time.